So what should free speech look like in the context of, take the Israel-Hamas war, the people who are concerned about what's going on in Gaza? How do those protests look in a way, because it has been deemed to be a lot of it anti-Semitic. I don't know if it's intentionally anti-Semitic. We've certainly seen a rise in anti-Semitism, but it's wrong to tar all people who are, protesting the war that way. What would you like to see? I mean, give me some sense of what normalcy would look like in this situation.
Well, protests against Israel's bombing, against Israel's targeted assassinations, that's all fair game. But Palestine will be free of what? Free of Jews from the river to the sea. Palestine will be cleaned of what? Dirty Jews.
Yeah.
There is a line, and people understand that line when it comes to blacks. You can say, for example, I'm not in favor of race-based affirmative action, but if you say that blacks are intellectually inferior, that crosses a line.
Yeah.
And people know that line, and there are lines. Also, criticism of Israel is fine. Criticism of Netanyahu is fine. Calling for the end of the only nation state of the Jewish people in the world, calling for the extermination of Jews between the river and the sea, that crosses Harvard's own line. So yeah. Harvard failed to apply its own standards.
I want to move on to the political realm, because I do consider you an expert on Trump. But I want to just pause for a second on the current landscape, because we've talked about this before. Give me your sense, Alan, as to are there any glimmers that we're moving in the right direction? Here we are talking about anti-Semitism. It is an issue being brought up in Congress, which to some extent would indicate progress. But are you overall pessimistic? Are you optimistic? I mean, it's just so polarized right now. I'm curious as to what's on the horizon.
Well, in Israel, they say a pessimist is somebody who says things are so bad they can't possibly get worse. And an optimist says, yes, they can. Combination of both. On the day that this butchery took place, October 7th, I dropped everything I was doing and I decided to write a book called The War Against the Jews. How to End Hamas's Barbarism. I finished it in 32 days, may break a record. And it's been published today. You can get it on Amazon. And I give you my whole analysis of the history of Gaza, the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, what happened on the 7th, more importantly, what happened on the 8th, when organizations condemned Israel. The National Lawyers Guild said it was an entirely proper military activity to rape women and to murder them. 33 Harvard groups blamed everything on Israel. I go into all of that in great detail in War Against the Jews, and I come up with solutions. And obviously the solution is a two-state solution. But to have a two-state solution, you must get rid of Hamas as the governing authority in Gaza. Their charter explicitly rejects a two-state solution, explicitly rejects Israel existing anywhere they regard as occupied, the area where they invaded and raped women. That was part of Israel from 1948 on. It's never been disputed territory. It was accepted by Egypt, it was accepted by Jordan, it's accepted by Saudi Arabia, but it's not accepted by Hamas. They think that Tel Aviv is part of Palestine, that every single city in Israel is occupied territory. You're never going to get a solution that way. You need a two-state solution with Hamas out of the picture, the Palestinian Authority, democratically elected, running both the West Bank and Gaza. Israel has offered the two-state solution in 1948, 1967, 1994, 2000, 2001, 2007, 2005, and it's still on the table. And I would hope that the parties, after this is all over and after Hamas is destroyed, could sit down and, under the leadership of President Biden and others, create the background for a two-state solution.
Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated that at the very least, maybe it's the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning. Do you see that happening from the progress we've seen so far?
No, I think it's a process that will continue. I'm hoping that the process will eventually lead to a two-state solution, which is not a perfect solution, but it's the least worst solution to the problem. The vast majority of Israelis want a two-state solution. A lot of Palestinians do. Not the people under the auspices of Hamas. They don't want a two-state solution. But I'm hoping the possibility of a two-state solution is still viable. It could have happened if Yasser Arafat had said yes to Camp David in 2000, 2001. We'd have a two-state solution today. I have sat down with Abbas, the Prime Minister of Israel. We've discussed the two-state solution.
Yeah.
I've sat with Fayyad, the former Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. If the will were there, it could be accomplished. It's not going to be easy. It gets harder every time there's an attack like this. But Israeli public opinion has still mostly focused on the possibility of a two-state solution.